Welcome. This is the Drupal usability meeting for January 3rd, 2025. Happy New Year, everyone. I'm Benji Fisher, sharing my screen and moderating, and also present are Ralph Kohler and Simo Helston. We're going to start today with issue 348-5202. Change the dialog modal heading from span to H1 with dialog title heading level option added in jQuery UI 1.14.1. So Ralph, I think the point is Drupal has just upgraded jQuery UI. So now we can do something that we couldn't do before. And I think we can illustrate it's this title up here, right?
Exactly.
And if we look at this in browser tools, we see it's just wrapped in a span. I don't know if that's large enough for you to see, or take my word for it, which of course is not good semantic markup. So, so Ralph, what exactly is the open question you have about this?
Uh, the open, just to provide a little bit of context in detail, people can look it up in the Drupal Slack as well. But the gist of it is basically in Drupal 10.3 and 11, the dialog model that Drupal updated to jQuery UI 1.14.0, which added, as you were also able to see in the DevTools, to the div, the aria modal equals true attribute. And up a little bit.
Not this div, but this
And,
one.
and this one, okay. As you can see,
Um,
the aria modal equals true. That one,
yes.
yep. Exactly. And that makes sure that basically before 1.14.0, basically the background of the dialog model was still included in the accessibility object model. And with the aria model true, everything in air quotes underneath the dialog model gets removed from the accessibility object model. And from that, it's basically a short-term fix until the native dialog element gets introduced to Drupal and jQuery UI gets dropped. But until then, that was a required addition, because otherwise, if you, for example, use VoiceOver and the rotor, that way all the elements also not available inside the dialog modal were still announced, and that is confusing. In particular, if I get to something like a views page and a dialog there, it's a mess that way. And yeah, but with the aria model applied, then that thing got more pressing, because still the title, because then you don't have an H1 or an H2 even in the dialog model anymore, and you just have that title wrapped in a span. And then was basically created another pull request for the that option to wrap the title instead of a span, which is the default behavior for backwards compatibility in either a H1, H2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. And in the issue you've linked, Benji, I've already created a pull request, and I copy and paste one small detail in the chat. In the dialog.js at the moment, the merge request has the following. It changes basically, because in dialog.js, you have the dialog show option, which opens a dialog with the modal option set to false, and the dialog show modal, which opens a dialog with the modal option to true. And at the moment, the merge request changes that and sets the show modal option to level 1, meaning an H1. And there I've been following a discussion on the Drupal, not on the accessibility Slack. And there was the consensus dialog modals should use the H1 in the title, and the main what's the term for person arguing for it is an accessibility specialist who is also happens to be a screen reader user who is blind, and therefore I take his word in particular for granted. But the question now is how to handle the case if the modal is set to false. Because I've stumbled across when I've testing one of the test modules shipping with Drupal core, and there's also the test case of a modal that is set to false. And the question there at the moment with the merge request in the current state, it is still wrapped in a span, the title. But the question is how to handle that case. Should it, I'm sort of leaning towards adding the UI dialog title heading level option there as well, but instead of an H1, rather go with an H2 maybe. But yeah, I'm not sure if if there are the odds that someone is using a dialog with the modal option set to false. And yeah, if it
Okay.
is used, it might be that there are gaps in the heading levels. So just wanted to have more opinions, and if perhaps someone has any experience or insights where and if that false option is used.
I'm wondering if there is a way to open such dialogue into a headless admin interface. So in that case, it could be that there needs to be something with the headers. But that's if that is, it would be an edge case to open it as something else than a dialogue, and that would be kind of weird. But yeah, in some kind of a headless or kind of a different kinds of implementations, there might be a case to do that.
Okay. So I think we're getting into a lot of the details of the implementation. But the point is that what we're looking at here is a modal dialogue, and there are also non-modal dialogues. And for a modal dialogue, you think the accessibility recommendation is clear that this should be wrapped in an H1.
Yep.
And the question is what to do for non-modal dialogues. Do I have
Yeah,
that right?
exactly.
Okay. And Simo, so you're wondering whether either type of dialogue can be shown in some sort of headless setup? Is that your concern?
Yeah, or somehow embedded in a way that it would appear like it would appear in kind of a wrong place.
Hmm.
But I think that would be such an edge case or a special case, so that the issue should be dealt with in the implementation of doing something like that. So we can always change the heading levels programmatically, but I think as default, this sounds like a good solution.
Okay. Um, so I've just installed one of the example modules on this site. So let's see. Blah, blah. I do not have to worry about either of those errors.
Search for dialog, simply.
I'm sorry?
Search for dialog,
Why dialogue?
because there's a dedicated dialog example module where I've tried it. Huh?
I don't see it.
Oh, 1 second.
I think it's the form API example module, which I've already enabled. And I just want to know the path to get there. So simple form, multi-step, vertical tab. Well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's not. Oh, maybe I'm misremembering. It should be one of the example modules.
1 second. I quickly have to look it up. Oh,
Maybe it's JavaScript.
Ajax test dialog.
Ajax example. That's what we want.
Maybe. And if you example, and now go to where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Go to in the path at Ajax. I post in the link. To the following path.
Okay, just a sec. Maybe I needed the EN language code.
That might be. Oh. 1 second. Oh, it's Ajax testing and just dialog.
Just
No,
dialogue.
no, yeah. Instead of dialog contents, it's just dialog, I guess. 1 second. Okay. Now my site is up, and then next. My memory is weak.
And the form API gives us the location.
Is it the Ajax form test mock module?
No.
I've installed the Ajax form test mock module and the Ajax test module. And with that, I'm able to get to the
Just a minute. Okay, here's the Ajax example. Simple test, text fields, dependent dropdown, dynamic form selection, wizard. So that's not it.
1 second. I simply share my site, and that way you can. It's faster now. Just hope I have the. 1 second. I have to create another user. Admin is working now.
And where do I go?
To Ajax test/dialog. No, dialog.
Oh, I'm being old-fashioned,
Yes.
giving it the full name. Okay. So here we have a modal. So the title is still wrapped in a span.
1 second. I can quickly check out the merge request again.
But I just want to see the difference between a modal dialog and a non-modal dialog. And they look very similar.
They look identical.
But I guess with the modal dialog, everything else is inaccessible.
Yep.
And that's not the case with the non-modal dialog. So that's sort of the difference, that a non-modal dialog lets you interact with the rest of the page.
Yep.
And so it's inappropriate for a non-modal dialog to make this an H1.
Yep.
So what should it be? Should it be an H2? Should we have an interface for choosing it?
Just for clarification, so it's part of the form, so it's not something that could be defined as a separate section, because under a section there could be it's possible to restart the numbering of headings, but if that's something that's integral to the it's part of another section, then it shouldn't be a separate one.
Right. And I think if we look at the page source and search for Ajax dialog and contents, say, you don't find that anywhere. I guess that's because it's produced by an Ajax call. All right, so if we look at it in the browser tools, here's the div, and it's down at the very bottom of the body section. So it is a top level section of the page. And where is this?
This is not shown. This
All
is
right, that's some sort of
consent management for Claro consent management module.
okay. So here we have the admin toolbar, bunch of visually hidden things, script tags, and then after all the script tags at the very bottom of the body section, we have the dialogue, which can be a regular dialogue or can be a modal dialogue. Um, so it's certainly not going to be inside any other heading element. It's not going to be, but it might be after an H1 and an H2. Um, so does that help clarify what the default should be?
Mm.
Yeah, I'm thinking semantically if it's it could be something like section or aside or something like that. Well, not aside, but kind of those landmarks. So like for instance, within, if there is an article in a view, inside that article, it's fine to have H1, or it's okay to have H1 inside an article tag. So kind of restart the numbering from there, it being a separate, but
So maybe this is what should be something other than a plain div, the wrapper for the whole dialogue.
But the div is basically the default element, and for dialogues in general, and I'm not sure if it's technically possible based on the way a dialogue is invoked, to change between elements.
Okay, so ignore that. The question you asked is about the title, which is currently a span.
Yeah.
Simo, do you see any problem with making this an H2? Would that, yeah, even if it's not perfect, would that be an improvement um, over a span, which is what it currently is? And why was I able to change that, but not other?
yeah, well, H2 is improvement, and also, yeah, so it's also possible, it's also kind of allowed to skip heading levels, even if it's not recommended. So it's not a violation of WebCAG. So it's kind of a, having it as heading 2 is an improvement.
Okay, I think that's enough. An H2 would be an improvement over a span. And if we can, figure out some way to make it more flexible in the future, that would be good too. But um, I think as a first step, making it an H2 is a good idea. That's what I'm hearing. And both of you know a lot more about accessibility than I do. I'm sort of have a nodding familiarity with the points you've brought up, but I defer to the two of you. Um,
Okay, then I simply make an update and add the H2 to the non-modal dialogues as well. And to note, Mike Gifford also agreed on the H2 on the thread in the UX channel. Thank you.
So I think I'm just searching for open dialogue, which I think is the Drupal Ajax class, or part of the name of the Drupal Ajax class for a regular non-modal dialogue. And the only place I see it is in some test files and in the CK Editor 5 module. So I guess if we want to see where um,
It's in
where
dialog.js. Search for 1 second. Dialog. In core misc dialog, and then dialog.js, and then in line 118 to 123.
but I'm looking for the PHP class that invokes that bit of JavaScript.
Oh, okay.
And the only place I see it is in the CK Editor module, or CK Editor 5. Um, so
And if do you see anything, for example, on a page like the views? For a view, there you have several links that invoke a dialog.
they all invoke modal dialogues, I believe.
Ah.
So maybe this is a non-modal dialogue.
Could you in the dev tools?
Ooh.
Uh,
CK Bloom rotator content. It's hard to scroll by just a little bit.
Doesn't look like a, in air quotes, Drupal dialog. It's more
No,
like a,
anyway, this, I think, for testing purposes, it would be nice to identify where non-modal dialogues are used. And I think CK Editors is the place to look for it. And
or if non-modal dialogs are used at all in the Drupal admin UI. And it is just an option you have, but which is not used.
yeah, if it's something that's never used, then we shouldn't worry about it too much. But anyway, I think we have our answer. We should use H1 for modal dialogues and H2 for non-modal dialogues. And if someone can come up with something better, yay, but that'll be an improvement over the spans we currently have.
I think I wouldn't invest too much time into the jQuery UI-based dialog solution, because in the long run, it will be moved to the dialog element anyway, and a native JavaScript or JavaScript won't be needed at all soon. So
Yeah, do we have a link to that issue?
which issue?
For implementing the native dialogues.
1 second.
I think it might be linked from here, but no.
I'm following it definitely. It is found it. That's the issue.
Now, this issue was opened in 2013,
Yeah.
more than 11 years ago.
And there is where is it?
And the priority is critical. So we need someone to bring this home. Needs work. What oh my gosh. Remaining task, list of libraries assessed prior to decision to use native dialogues. Libraries to review. And then implement the library. So I wonder.
That is probably outdated.
It's only 105 comments, which is not a lot for something that's for an issue that's been open 11 years.
Yeah, but there is now the native dialog element that could be used, and the only thing JavaScript is necessary for is at the moment the invocation of the dialog. And with the YouTube video I've shared about the invokers, if that would be in place, then there wouldn't be any need for JavaScript anymore. It would be simply all possible within browsers.
And I forgot for the sake of the recording, the issue we just looked at is 2158943. Had a native dialog element to deprecate the jQuery UI dialog. And
do you hate having the simple actions like
Autoplay, yay.
so let's see this. The YouTube string isn't too bad. Capital C TD9 hyphen capital B B 2J hyphen capital Y. So that talks about
Invokers.
invokers, new HTML API to trigger events without JavaScript. Speaking of issues that have been open for a long time, there's one that we looked at a while ago in the usability meeting, and I did some code review on it, and we finally got it fixed. This is also an old issue, slightly older than the JavaScript issue, but it's issue 1986330. When batch ID doesn't exist, Drupal should emit a 404. So I think it's easy enough to demonstrate on either of our test sites. If you go to batch/1234, you get page not found. And it used to redirect you to the home page with some sort of status message. And this is, I think everyone agreed that a 404 response is more appropriate.
Yep.
So that was fixed yesterday, I think. 2 January. Yes, it was fixed yesterday, and I'm running the most up-to-date version of Drupal core, the dev branch, the 11.x dev branch. So I have that new behavior. So We should celebrate more often. Sometimes the issues we look at and we give advice on, we do unblock them and they do get fixed, even if they've been open for 11 years. Okay, we have 15 more minutes. Can we do something useful with that time?
Looking at the backlog. Not sure if it makes sense to start with any of the issues on the backlog.
So going back to this native JavaScript dialog, it seems there's a
Yeah, I've
contrib module.
linked the module in the chat as well.
Thank you. So it's dialog_native. What's the status? It's in alpha. It was
Last
created.
updated July.
So first half of last year.
Yep.
And they seem to also be talking about a dedicated Slack channel.
Yep, it's dialog. Also dialog_native.
So yeah, there was some discussion here again in the first half of 2024. And then since July, it jumps from July to September, and only a few comments since then. So it looks like it had some momentum, but lost it. Um, so the other question is, do they have a plan issue? How can we finish this in the foreseeable future? I guess that is the question. And this is all by one person, Finsky. So uh, I guess it is still a hard problem.
Looks like.
And I'm not a JavaScript developer. I'm probably not the right person to help with it.
At the moment, it's not really testable. So Bit of way to go.
So we used up 5 minutes talking about that. I think you mentioned there's a Google Doc associated to this issue.
Yeah, that's the one where we've scroll down a bit in yeah. There we've already added new drafts.
And
Step 1 is basically the first page with the top level or the groups, and the second is the field type options, which doesn't apply to all.
okay,
yeah,
so that top part was some comments copied from Slack discussions.
no, those are comments from myself, not from discussions.
Okay.
Just points and points worth to discuss and to reflect on. And yeah, if you scroll up a little bit, you can see in column C, those were the if you scroll further up, yeah, we managed the text plain and text plain long strings and discussed basically those in the meeting in October.
So we have almost 10 minutes left. Shall we spend a little time filling this out?
We could proceed.
Let's see, how many more columns are there?
Only 3. Basically, the suggestion I've made, and if you scroll on the right, you have a few comments I've copied over from the linked issue that might have provided a few more insights and inspirations. Yeah, but I would stick to the pattern we've agreed on for plain text, for formatted text as well. So instead of text formatted, go with short text and long text.
So this column contains our recommendations, and you added your own suggestions after considering that?
No, those were my initial work, and we've discussed basically
Okay.
my suggestions in the draft there and ideated on that.
And for context, let me move this over. And again, this is the related issue. No, this is not the related.
It is no, the related. It's basically the issue where the discussions.
So refine field descriptions, issue 3370326. And then if we go back to create new field and choose, for example, plain text, then it's these descriptions we're looking at.
Exactly. And that is also the point. At the moment, we don't have a dialogue, and therefore the H1 is always at field, no matter at which step you are. And the context is completely missing. And that is one of the points if you go to the Google Sheet. So meaning the overall context would be add field colon plain text as the suggestion or something, or step 1 or step 2, and it's still debatable. But at the moment, the page title is not helpful.
Right. And so the recommendation is both to alter the H1 and then have a little bit of redundancy,
Yeah.
also say short text and not just short, because of course, people with different ways of viewing the page won't find the H1 as helpful. So we repeat that context, and instead of just text, say short text. Rather, instead of short and long, say short text and long text. I think at at one point it was suggested just short and long, but we recommended short text and long text.
Yeah, basically the column D and B is basically mirrored because it was basically the current, I've copied over my to the current draft, and after that we had the UX meeting, so the current draft is basically a mirror of color in D.
Okay.
But yeah, I was reluctant back then when we've discussed it to make it longer and a bit more redundant, but revisiting now, I'm fine with it. But back then I was hesitant. But yeah, with a bit of distance, short text, long text, it's okay.
Okay, so we already considered plain text and long text. So we considered this page.
Yeah.
I have to keep an eye on the clock. We only have 3 minutes left. So for formatted text, I guess if we were to go back and choose formatted text, then presumably we would want formatted text to be in the H1. So I think we would have add field, formatted text. And then would we want just short text?
I would keep the pattern in that regard.
Short text, and long text with summary, something like that.
Yeah. I'm not sure what I've used back then for the last, but yeah, long text with summary then, yeah.
And putting part of the description in parentheses really isn't all that helpful.
In regards of readability, it's not good. I would use, again, the same efficient storage.
I just copy those two.
Yeah.
And then I never liked the ideal. I think that's sort of over-promising. recommended
Yeah.
is better in
Yeah.
my opinion. Ah,
And recommended we've also used back then.
yes.
Therefore, yeah, that's totally fine. I think ideal, not sure why I've picked it up. Because ideal was initially used in the initial approach, and therefore I stuck with it for the moment. But I agree, recommended is the better choice.
Okay, and we are at the end of the hour now.
1 second, you've missed the allows rich text formatting.
I haven't put anything in here.
Yeah. I mean, otherwise it would be missed. And you need a certain difference to basically plain text because it's formatted text and which it is based on, and therefore I thought something. I'm not sure if rich text formatting rings a bell to everyone, but I guess something like that should be added at least.
Well, we
But
already have.
Like about a year and a half ago, I think I asked in Slack what people think about rich text, or what is the correct or most understood, and it was, I think the idea was that rich text is something like rather technical, so it's not for kind of newbies or web. So that's something that formatted was preferred, I think.
I also think that it's not a differentiator. Well, once we're on the page for formatted text, it's not a differentiator between the three options. And we already get the idea across with bold, italic, or links down here.
Ooh,
I actually think we don't need this.
true. And it solves also the problem Simo pointed out, that it's a technical term, basically.
Yeah, let's totally avoid that problem by just deleting this entry.
Good point.
And less is more.
True.
Okay, we're a couple of minutes over time. And maybe we, if nothing more pressing comes up, we can return to this next week. And I also plan to spend some of my own time on trying to get the modals to work. So thank you both for coming, and hope to see you next week.
Thank you. Have a nice weekend, everyone.
Thanks. Have a
Yes,
nice weekend.
too.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.